My name is Lynn Fraser. I'm the managing editor of Freefall, and I'm hoping that all of you are here to help us launch this issue of Freefall. Our first reader is Inge Truman, and she'll read from her story, A Root Beer Season. Inge grew up in Edmonton, then moved to Fort McMurray, where she worked for an aircraft charter company and learned to fly. In 1982, she went with her husband to Nairobi, Kenya, where they lived for the next 6 years. After settling in Calgary in 1991, Inge attended Mount Royal College and began the serious endeavor of writing novels. And here she is to read the first part of a novel.
I'll be reading an excerpt from my novel, A Root Beer Season. It is narrated by 15-year-old Sonia Pfeiffer. She's reporting for her first shift as a car hop at the Edmonton A&W, and the year is 1967. I can't see. I had to bring my own copy because they didn't print the big print edition. Okay, here we go. Stockwell's office was just inside the back door. It was tiny, just a cubbyhole really. 2 rows of moist French fry boxes were piled to the ceiling, and beside them rested at least 20 empty gallon-sized bottles. Come in, Sonia. He wrestled an extra chair from within the chaos and placed it next to his. The desk, attached to the back wall, was ambushed by curly-cued cash register tapes and a stack of bills that looked like they'd just been pulled out of a swamp. On the left, opposite the door, a tiny dirt-streaked window was propped open with a root beer mug, allowing the odd cool breeze to enter. Pushing the mess of papers to one side, he placed a clean form in front of me and handed me his ballpoint pen. First, you have to fill out another one of these. He slid his chair back and added, remember, no fibbing. I tried to swallow. The whimper caught in my back of my throat, but it wouldn't go down. He patted me on the shoulder and in a gentler voice said, I'm just pulling your leg. Take your time. I'll be back in 2 minutes. The sound of buffoonery once more ricocheted throughout the small building. I took a deep breath and forced myself to relax. The form was identical to the one I'd completed last week, and I wrote what I hoped were the identical answers. My pen hesitated over the date of birth question, and then, in a firm and deliberate hand, I wrote, January 20th, 1951, in big bold letters. Mr. Stockwell pushed his pudding face through the doorway. You done yet? He asked. I know it's the same damn form you filled out last week. He squeezed himself back into his chair. But we need one for here and one for the head office downtown. That's where they make sure everything you've written down is God's truth. In my head, I mumbled a quick prayer to Mary and Jesus. Without so much as a glance at my answers, he turfed the form into a wire basket on top of a battered file cabinet. Let's get you downstairs and suited up. You're what, about 5'3" and 100 pounds? His eyes traveled up and down my body as though he were sizing up a new rake. Nice, new, but exciting, hardly. I'm 5'3 3/4 and 97 pounds, I corrected him. No matter, you're a runt and you'll be wearing the smallest uniform we got. Did you remember your shoes? I pointed to a crumpled bag just inside the doorway. Good girl. He scraped both chairs toward a pile of wet boxes and waited for me to get out of the way. Well, grab them and let's get this show on the road, shall we? Alone in the car hop room in the basement, I sat on a low wooden bench, just like the ones in the gym locker room at school, except there were no lockers here, just a blank wall with a bunch of coat hooks screwed into it. Pushed to one side, a wiggly-looking metal table doubled as a car hop catch-all. It was littered with half-filled mugs of flat root beer, and at one end a tray overflowing with lipstick-stained coffee cups. Beside it, a glass ashtray had tipped over and the spilled soot had grafted itself to a sticky puddle of pop. A delicate mold had started to form around the edges of the mess. It seemed to have halted of its own accord, as if it couldn't decide whether to grow into some exotic species of fungus or a cure for syphilis. I carried the ashtray to the bench, lit a cigarette and sat down, my elbows digging holes into the tops of my knees. Slowly, I turned my head toward the orange and brown uniform waiting for me, neatly folded on the far end of the bench. The coarse brown slacks prickled where they touched my bare legs. I slipped on the short-sleeved, perfectly starched white cotton shirt. It felt as cool and bracing as the polyester pants were hot and sticky. Humidity hung from the rafters like a long-forgotten flycatcher, sticky sweet and perfume with the ever-pervasive scent of root beer. I turned a strange little hat this way and that, a brown canoe with a round A&W logo stitched to one side. With a dozen headache-making bobby pins, I fixed it to my head. A flawless representation of car hop ideal flouted superiority at me from the only poster on the wall. I turned slightly to the left and looked at her out of the corner of my eye. Her gaze followed my every move, no matter which way I twisted and turned. She made me think of those ghoulish portraits that always hung in the dining rooms and hallways of crumbling castles all over Bucharest or Transylvania or wherever. "Piss off," I hissed at her and turned back to the mirror to check my lipstick one last time. A loud knock on the door nearly had me out of my skin. "You ready?" It was Mr. Stockwell. "Coming," I said. Back upstairs, I felt conspicuous and stupid in the brown uniform. "Carol, this is Sonia Pfeiffer," Mr. Stockwell said. "I want you to show her the ropes." The way she said "love to" made me cringe. I'm sure the only rope in her mind was the one she was picturing around my neck. Stockwell pursed his lips and threw her a playful scowl. "Try to be nice," he said. Carol stopped flogging the cash register just long enough to scowl back at him and toss a miserly smile in my direction. Carol Pinder was tall and thin, scrawny really. The bottom of her slacks barely reached her naked ankles, her dirty socks having worked their way into her equally dirty shoes. Everything about her exuded impatience, and I instinctively knew she was the queen bee in these parts and would sting if provoked. Her voice was like gravel. When she spoke, she sounded like a hard-living woman 3 times her age, although I guessed her to be no more than 20. Her complexion was sallow. Either she was recovering from some exotic fever or she'd stayed out too late the night before. This seemed to give her an unarticulated right to ill humor, and she scared the hell out of me. "See that car?" she rasped as soon as Mr. Stockwell had retreated to his office. She pointed a dirty finger toward a newer model Camaro pulling into a stall at the farthest end of the center aisle. "He's a first-class asshole. He comes here all the time, mostly just to piss me off, and I'm not going out there again. You'll have to go." She pulled her order pad from the root beer-stained apron around her waist and snatched one of the 2 pencils tucked behind her ear. "You'll have to go," she said again, as she shoved the items into my chest. "He thinks he's God's gift, but he's too stupid to know it ain't Christmas." "What do I say to him?" I stammered. "I don't give a rat's ass. Tell him to take a flying leap." "No, I mean, is there a special thing you're supposed to say to the customers?" Carol peered at me as if her worst fears had come true and I really was an unalterable idiot. Bean, the front-end guy, cleared his throat. "It's easy." She took the order pad out of my hand. Her voice softened when she said, "Just check off what he wants. It'll be coffee anyway, the cheap bastard. Write down CL, down here somewhere." She pointed to the bottom part of the bill. "CL means coffee loaded, like him, every freaking night." With my mouth dry and my heart threatening to come apart inside my chest, I plunged toward what would become the center of my universe, an asshole in a red Camaro. Thank you.